Thank you for that warm welcome, and I used to get very puffed up about those warm welcomes when you stood up, but I finally figured out over my years you've been sitting on you know what for a long period of time. So we sort of do two things at once, but thank you anyway. It's great to be here. I started out in Ketchikan, took the ferry to Wrangell, flew to Petersburg in 12 minutes, and now I'm over here in Juneau, and I get a little better the further north I get as far as the weather goes. You know, I served 8 years in the state legislature, and I've always said there's no prettier place in southeast Alaska, one that's pretty. And today is absolutely gorgeous, and I always appreciated that. And you know, the sad part about it when I started, by the way, thank you. I just started my 40th year in the United States Congress. Thank you very much. And I've still got the interest and the fire about doing the job for you. The rest of the state of Alaska is the only congressman. We have some great battles ahead of us. We've had some battles behind us. We've won some and we've lost some. And I think the most disappointing thing in my career is really as much fighting I've been able to do with Senator Stevens and Senator Murkowski. I've sort of let you down because I couldn't stop what's happened in southeast Alaska. Your economy is in a precarious position now, as you all know it. We don't have a whole lot going right now when you look around this area and see the gorgeous opportunities. The opportunities of real jobs, not government jobs, jobs that produce real wealth, not borrowed wealth. An area they can support probably 3 times as many people that we have here today, not here in this room, but in southeast Alaska, without doing any harm to the environment. And that's been my biggest drive, because we, the public, has been sold because we thought that you don't need to manufacture goods from the resources we have in this nation or in the state of Alaska. We can buy it all. And that's inappropriate as far as our economy goes here, because my job is to make sure, and I try to do this, that your young people could stay here. Your young people that were born here could have jobs in Alaska that created wealth. And we've lost the timber industry. Probably one of the biggest I saw inappropriate acts of any interest groups that's ever occurred in any state in the Union and on federal land. There won't be a timber industry as we knew it before, because no one's going to invest unless you have at least 50-year contracts to return on your dollars in the pulp business. We are now being challenged about saw logs. We have one mill. Viking is the only real mill left in this state. Employs about 80 people. And they're under threat now from the lack of timber. And look around this whole area. Even look at Douglas Island. How many of you ever looked at Douglas Island when it was, Treadwell Mine was here? Every one of the trees were cut off that island. They have regrown. Forestry is a renewable product. When you allow it to die without proper management, you're not getting the best value out of it. And that's what's happened in Southeast. Now we have a group of people in certain areas, they're talking about, well, we'll have specialty areas. We'll high grade the timber. We'll build fiddleheads and cello chart fronts. That's great. And I'll agree that one log is worth a lot more money that way. But how many violin bodies can you sell? And who does it employ? Who takes and keeps our schools going? In Wrangell, we've got down to 312 students in Wrangell from approximately 500. In Petersburg, we've gone about 470 down to 412. Well, anytime you see your schools decline in population, that means your society is dying, just like your trees. Now, I can say that because I am one of those mature trees. This is called old growth timber right here, and it should be harvested. I am suggesting that to solve those problems, some things have to occur. One, we have to reestablish a Forest Service that believes in silviculture and not one that believes it is parks. We have to reinstate the idea that we are here to manage our timber industry. And we ought to have the lands available to have at least smaller mills operating. At least enough timber to run Viking, maybe 2 or 3 other sawmills, and employ approximately 300 or 400 people instead of 15,000 people at the height of our timber industry. We have to do that in the Southeast. Then we go beyond that. I'm a little disappointed. I heard that the state has come down with a study that it's too expensive to build a grid in the Southeast. I would suggest respectfully, I'd like to know what that gentleman was talking about. Is it expensive? Yes. Is it too expensive? No. Keep that in mind. The grid of hydropower in Southeast is the gas line for Southeast. If we're talking about building a gas line up north in my area for the benefit of Alaskans, and then we ought to build a grid down here that provides you the power to maintain your economy and heat your homes, and in fact increase value added for what little timber we have, and of course value added to the fish products we still have. You can't do anything in our state without cheap power. That's what's killing us in Fairbanks right now. So if you can do anything out of the Southeast Conference, you go to the legislative body and say, we need those hydro sites and the transmission lines put in place so everybody's connected. And that's your job, to convince those people you are part of Alaska. You are part of Alaska. And that's the solution to the future of this state, of this area, is cheap energy. For the whole state, but here it's hydro. Now, I'm not talking about great big dams, but how and why we can't build some of our dams is, of course, the regulatory laws. The regulatory laws. I just came out of Petersburg, and they have an issue where they want to extend their harbor, but they can't dredge it. So they have to build into it. And before they can build well, I call it a causeway, they have to mitigate the loss of land. And so right now, they started to mitigate, and the Corps of Engineers said, oh, it's polluted because there are certain elements in the soil that are natural. But it's polluted. So what has been agreed to, the state, I will give the state credit for that, has said, oh no, that's not polluted. We'll use it to cover our landfill at the top of a mountain. That means they've got to take and fill that dirt into a dump truck and take it 8 miles up a mountain and dump it on top of so-called waste. But think of the cost of that. Does it make any sense? Where is the logic in what is occurring in this state and this nation? And what can the state do about that? I argue the state has to be the aggressor. I'm going to meet with the governor tomorrow, and he may not agree with me, to be the aggressor to protect municipalities. Small municipalities, when you have the EPA, the Corps of Engineers, the Forest Service, Coast Guard, whatever it is, come in and tell you a stupid regulation affects you. And the state becomes the buffer between the federal government and the municipalities. So you can have the money to have your schools, development resources, and do the other things you should be able to do in your communities without being punished by an agency to say it's regulatory law and we can shut you down and fine you and actually put you in jail. This is not the America I know. We've allowed this to happen. The Congress is guilty of this. We have 1,600,000 regulatory laws on the books today that were never voted on. And anywhere in the Constitution that says that you can make and pass a regulatory law that can punish an individual citizen of the United States of America, I'll kiss your ear. I said ear. That's what I'm talking about, where we are over-governed by federal agencies that have no responsibility to the local community economically or socially. And that's where the state has to be more aggressive. And I ask you to ask your legislators, let's think about this state as a state. not just individual areas. When I represent this whole state, and if I can help Southeast, that helps Anchorage. It helps Fairbanks. It helps Nome. Helps Kotzebue and Barrow. And in turn, if I can help Fairbanks, that helps you too, and you ought to support that. We divide ourselves into individual groups and we get swallowed by those that oppose any type of resource development and economic well-being in this state. And that's our fault. Now, I'm still fighting this back in Congress. I'm having a little difference of opinion today. You may not have read it. I'm a little frustrated right now because I worked very hard on the transportation bill. TLU is one of the better bills that we've ever passed, named after my wife. They didn't like that, but I did it. I usually do everything I want to do anyway. But anyway, I did it. But they have passed a bill out of the Senate today that does very little. Now, I've got to go back to the House and try to retain what was in TLU for the benefit of this state. And that includes down here. IR roads, otherwise native roads, cut out. Well, they have a 2-year extension. They front-end load it, but then 2 years from now they got to pay for 50% of it, or cut back 50% of their money. Ferry system, not saved, is under my bill. The railroad, lost $38 million to the railroad, and they sold garbage bonds. And so I have my battle cut out in Washington, and I have 2 good senators, but sometimes I would wish that they would be more aggressive when it comes to keeping what we've got from the federal government and not asking for a whole lot more. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. Everybody knows in this room where I stand on earmarks. If you don't agree with me, fine. But as small communities, you're on the short end of the stick. Because their idea now on these bills that after we pass the budget, the money is going to be given to the Federal Highway Commission, for instance, and in turn they're going to send it to the State Department of Transportation, and in turn, where do you think it's going to go? It's not going to go down here. It's not going to go to your communities. And that's what earmarks are all about. If you read the Constitution very carefully, only the Congress can raise and spend money, not the President of the United States. And that's what they're allowing to do, and that's our fault as individuals. So let's say we have hydro on the grid built, we get some timber by state selection, which I believe we can because we have 27 million acres of land that we can still select. They ought to select it in Southeast Alaska around these communities because you know why you didn't get it, because it's reserved at the time of statehood. So we ought to select about 2.5 million acres in Southeast Alaska. States should request that. So we have a timber base. We have a mineral base, which we should be able to develop if we don't get lawsuits that prevent us from doing it. Just like we had the Kingston mine and how long that took before we finally got a permit. And we have to start on the national level, and I know some people in this room won't agree with me, but I'm going to say it anyway, that you have one bite at the apple with a lawsuit to sue an agency that issues the permit. And that's it. So we can get things done. Right now, you can't get things done. And for me, I think that's probably the worst thing that's happened to the economy of this nation, of this state. So I'm excited about what I'm doing. I hope that you understand that I wish to have a magic wand. I think that'd be very helpful. We don't have those things. Maybe I'll put in a study to develop one right now. And before I close, I have a solution to all our problems. I'm going to take, what is it, Pfizer? It developed Viagra, right? But I'm going to ask them to concentrate on developing a logic pill. And every elected official and every bureaucrat that works for the federal government has to take a logic pill every morning. And in doing so, there'll be some logic in how we govern the people of the United States of America. Now, and so far that hasn't caught on. But that's what I'm working on to make sure it can happen, so if people have some logic when they make a decision on a community that affects their economy and the well-being of each person that lives in that small community. A little logic could go a long ways. Don't give me the so-called regulatory law. Use a little brains, a little logic. It'd be very helpful. That's a little short raving and ranting, but I'll answer any questions. Thank you, and God bless. What do we got? Who's going to be the first one to get an A?
I'm right here, Congressman. Thank you very much for your words. They meant a lot to us. My name is Richard Peterson. I'm on the Board of Directors for Southeast Conference, and I co-chair the Mining Committee from a little village, Kasan on Prince of Wales Island. And right now we're right in the midst of the mining industry. And that brings me to our question. We have two mines that could really bring a real help to our region, jobs, schools, everything that goes along with it. But the problem is we need access and cheap power. And what can we do to make those happen so that those mines can go strong and get our people back to work?
Well, the access problem is still a challenge we have because they'll give you every excuse why you can't go through a national forest. As I said, the key to any mining operation or any development of any resource, manufacturing or extraction, is power, cheap power. And I'm hoping that we will pursue that so you're tied into a grid where you have cheap power to develop the mining operations you're asking for. We have the same problem up north, by the way, like the Donlin Creek mine. The cheap power is so expensive it's questionable. So we're trying to figure out how we can solve that problem too on a personal level as far as private money goes. But in your area, because you are surrounded by Forest Service lands, if you can get me the maps and what you want to have done in those two mines areas, and we'll see if we can, you know, if I have information is power, by the way, we can probably work out something with the Forest Service. And I have to say, for those of you within the Forest Service, nothing personal. I just think that you've lost sight of what your responsibilities are. And I say that because show me where we have managed the forest, not only in Southeast Alaska, all over the lower 48 where there's national forest. We're losing our forests to bugs and to fires. There's no management occurring. Someone got in there a long time ago, including some I know, have decided Forest Service should be parks. And that's not what it's about. This is a renewable resource. And so that's what we'll have to work on. Maybe we can help you out on that. Yes, sir. What else we got around here?
Congressman Young.
Where are we?
Back here.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. My name is Torrey Corn. I'm the chair of the Tourism Committee and on the Board of Directors for Southeast Conference as well. It's my understanding that in 2015, a 200-mile limit on admissions control area will go into effect. And I was just hoping, from a tourism perspective, that limits the amount of time cruise ships can stay in port. I think it has other ramifications. If you could maybe just elaborate on that and what we as an area organization can do to, you know, try to convince people what will happen to our communities and our jobs in this area if that goes into effect.
If you're talking about the pipe of fuels that are being burned on the ships that come into Southeast Alaska, is that what you're talking about?
Well, my understanding is it'll be a low sulfur requirement.
Yeah. They're trying to implement that already on your cruise ships and your freight ships, which raises the price of all the products you consume. And I learned something the other day on the ferry, by the way. Bunker C fuel is much stronger than diesel fuel. You get more power. It's more BTUs in a gallon of bunker oil than there is diesel. But we're going to the diesel, and it does affect us at high cost because it's a losing cause because bunker is more supposedly pollutant than exhaust. Diesel fuel itself is less pollutant, but you burn more of it. So the total amount of particulate amount equals to the bunker fuel. But you want to get frightened about it's not going to be diesel fuel. It's not going to be bunker fuel. It's going to be natural gas. They're pushing natural gas for all our ships. And it takes let's use an example that we can understand. For 1 gallon of bunker fuel for BTUs, it takes, I think it's 3 gallons of diesel to give you the same BTUs. It takes 6 gallons of natural gas to give you the same BTUs that you have in the 1 gallon of bunker fuel. So the exhaust is cleaner, but the total amount of emissions is equal to or more. And I say, come on guys, what are we trying to do here? So to answer your question, they're going to try to do that. By 2015, maybe we'll have, hopefully by 2012 we'll have, or 2013 we'll have a new person in the White House, a new administration. That's what I'm working on right now, by the way. Keep that in mind. Yeah. And it will affect the tourist industry. Believe me. You know, one thing about tourist industry, I know you're interested in tourists. The only time the tourist industry will work is if you have a good economy in the lower 48. And you haven't seen the results of the cost of fuel now in the lower 48 and the effect upon your tourist industry. If not this coming year, the next year. Because the people that go on cruises, etc., their buying power decreases as they spend money on gasoline. Who turned the lights up? Gasoline and diesel fuel applied to the trucks, that consumes the dollars which you can spend on tourism, on people that want to travel. So we have to be very careful of that in the state of Alaska because we are dependent upon it. We had a good year last year. We're hoping for a good year this year because it's already been purchased. What's going to happen next year is the one I'm worried about. So I mean, you've got tourist shop, keep that in mind. All right, what else we got?
Congressman, welcome to Southeast Alaska, and we appreciate you spending a lot of time with our citizens down here. I'm Merrill Sanford, Southeast Conference Board and Chairman of the Energy Committee. We've had a great session on energy in the past couple days, in fact the past year. We know that we have lots and lots of energy and hydropower that we could build. We need some place to send it and some place for it to go. One of the visions have been to look at the north, and do you see any vision or any way to get some of our power within Alaska up north to the northern part of the state?
Well, first let me say, and this is what you call meddling between the in-laws, and I hate to do that. I will do that. I got to tell you one story about the worst pain I ever suffered in my life. I think you'll appreciate, especially you guys in the room. I was 19 years old and I was in a bar. I was trying to spread religion, but I was in a bar. And there was a beautiful girl sitting right here next to me, and boy, my heart was pitter-pattering, and there was a big old guy sitting on the other side. And all of a sudden he hit her alongside the head and knocked her off the stool. And that made me a little irritated, you know, the testosterone was running, and I whacked him good, knocked him, and jumped on top of him, and just whacking him good. That's the way my knuckles are all screwed up. But anyway, I was having a great time doing this. He struck that beautiful girl. And all of a sudden, the worst pain I ever had in my life was coming from my head. And finally, I had to throw my hands up like this. Blood is dripping all over everything. It was the lady who got knocked off the stool. And she had one of those, like you're still wearing them, and thank you ladies, one of those high spiked heels with a little metal on the end of it. And she was beating the bejesus out of me. Because it was her husband who knocked her off the stool. So I don't want to get in this discussion between the wife and the husband. But I will suggest respectfully, I understand why people want to export their energy while they have it. Because that helps pay for a lot of things to be built. But I would also like to suggest respectfully, if you're depending on a California market or a Canadian market, make sure you've got enough energy for the future growth in your communities. See, I envision, if I could, no more smoke out of smokestacks, no more diesel fuel. I envision your houses, your schools, your clinics, your churches, and your businesses run on hydropower. That's the solution to your economy in Southeast Alaska. With the accumulation of some timberland and a few other things, if you've got power, you can do marvelous things. So be really hesitant. Have the markets tell you how much you're going to need for the next 150 years or 100 years. And say, okay, what can we do? And this is where the state comes in. What we can do without selling all of our energy. How can we get the money to build the infrastructure and the transmission line? And I still believe that the state's going to invest in a gas line up north. They've got to build you a grid and a hydro system down here. Now that, is my head hurting yet? I don't know if it's got blood or not. But all right, what else we got?
Yes, Congressman, thank you. I'm Bryce Dahlstrom with Southeast Conference and also the chair of the Timber Committee. And also I run the only sawmill in Alaska here. We have kind of lost faith in the Forest Service to supply us with short-term and long-term. You mentioned the state forest. We're kind of looking at that maybe more of a long-term goal. Do you have anything on like a 25-year legislative timber sale program that,
Well, and, you know, here's the problem you have. As I said, I'm disappointed in Forest Service. They talk about having sales. By the way, they're under attack because they spent $29 million putting up sales last year. Did they put up sales that were economical? No. Is there a way to build the roads? Probably not. So why would anybody, because they always say, nobody bid on it. Why would you bid on something you're going to lose money? You're in the business of employing people. You're not going to do that. And they'll say, oh, wait. So they're losing sight. They do pick the areas because some of their interest groups say it's a watershed or it affects mine view or some other nonsensical thing. And but usually, by the way, that's somebody who's got a check in the mail every month and they're not really putting much out for it. So that's our challenge. Now the state, I go back to what the state could do. If they were to try to select around each community in southeast Alaska, and let's say every community 100, 200,000 acres of land out of the Forest Service, the Tongass, for the benefit of that community. And I hope they have smarts enough to build some areas that got some good timber on them. So the benefit, including some that's already been cut, that's not bad either. So that there be an economic base for each one of these small communities. That has to be on the state level. Federally, unless we change this whole concept and the makeup of the Congress, you know, I'm like a wolf crying in the middle of the Yukon River. Most of these guys are from San Francisco, Miami, Philadelphia, New York, LA, Seattle. And the reality is they want to save the tree, not realizing it's already dead. If you follow, that's the fight we have with the federal government. And we have in the Forest Service, and I understand this, and I've told them this before, you have those that now will not have a sale that possibly could be legislated, not legislated, file a suit against. Now wait a minute, that's every one of you. I'll guarantee you someone's going to file a suit against it. So that means there won't be more sales. So where do we go from there? Like I said in my little first presentation, I'll let everybody have one bite at the apple, but that's it. Right now they can sue and sue and sue and sue, and that is inappropriate, you know. Anyway, I can't solve your problem 100% because I don't have that. I wished I had that magic wand. John?
Thank you for your suggestion that we have community forests. That's really a terrific idea. The question is, in 2006, Regional Forester Denny Bashore registered a 50-year right-of-way from Wrangell, Tyee to the British Columbia, so that would not only tie the highway system but the transmission systems between Southeast Alaska and British Columbia. My question is, with that right-of-way registered in place for 50 years, how about getting some funds to build that right-of-way?
Well, we had some funds, you know, for a while, and I don't know where they went. We did appropriate some dollars, federal dollars, for the Stikine Wrangell, Bradfield Road, I believe is what you're talking about, the Bradfield. And I don't know what happened to those funds. I will tell you it's going to be awfully hard to get funds appropriated from the United States government today. And for something to that extent, it's an expensive one. This is the question I have and always have had. If they don't reinstate earmarks, you can just about not ever get any, because it's not going to go to Alaska. It's going to go to the large metropolitan areas. That's what the president wants, and that's what we've given him. It's the wrong way to go. But I'd like to see a road. I'd like to see this road finished right out here. I really like to have that. I mean, it makes no sense at all. And you know, one of the discussions I've had with some of my state legislators, I said, you know, you've got to start physically building some things that will produce dollars. You know, you can pass these laws that are good lawyer laws that really don't produce anything. You know, you've heard me say this. There's only one thing that makes an economy strong. That's the manufacturing of resources, or taking of resources and manufacturing from to create real wealth. And I talk to them, sometimes, you know, I'll spend money for health programs, things like that, but I keep telling those people that want that money, if you don't have the real wealth, you don't exist. You don't exist. Government doesn't produce a nickel. It consumes. Agencies don't produce a nickel. They consume. Even healthcare. Those make all the money. I love these ads say, oh, the fastest growing industry in the United States of America is healthcare. Well, that's good. But unless you have real dollars to support that healthcare, you don't have any healthcare. And that's what's hard to get to people's mind, because we started buying things, getting things done for us about 65 years ago we started. And this whole nation now is, with 47% of the people who don't pay income tax, the entitlement programs that we have today, they all consume. Everybody knocks the 1% up here. I'm not really happy with them either. But the fact is they're up here. But you can take and tax them or take all their money, and our debt gets affected about that much. The people that pay the taxes, should be the working people, are about that big. And then you have this group down here that are not putting anything in the pot. And that's what's happened to this nation. And that's what they're trying to accelerate in Washington, D.C. Their idea, when I listened to the president, and Nancy Pelosi, we got rid of her, thank God. I'm serious about that. When they stand in front of the United States of America and say, we're going to transfer the American people into a new era of life. No one ever asked me if I want to be transferred. I want us to be the nation I knew and loved today, where I have the responsibility for my actions. And if I put forth effort, I can go from the bottom to the top without the government telling me I can't. If I trip over the curb because I'm drunk, I don't want to be able to sue the city because the curb is there. And that's what's happened to our society. It's your fault. It's your fault. Again. And we've got to reinstate that with our young people and our people in this nation to keep a freedom. And this is not new. This has happened in every great nation in the world over the years. We allow ourselves to listen to those stupid cell phones. We allow ourselves to be lured in the idea that the government has the answer for you, and don't you question it. Don't you question it. Because you're wrong, and you're not American if you question the government. Don't say that we're wrong, we're right. And we want to tell your kids, oh, by the way, that their kids, when they can be born, how they're going to make their living, how long they're going to live, what occupation they're going to have. That's what they want. And that's what's happened in other great countries, and it's failed miserably. Look at Greece today. I don't want that to happen to this nation. I don't want it to happen to this state. We talk about the great last frontier. We're losing that frontier. You know, we have a battle up north that I shouldn't get involved in, but I have to tell you the fear of it. The Pebble Mine. They've managed to take and divide the communities. And keep this in mind, because it affects each one of you, not so much in Southeast, but it affects everybody in this state. And I'm not for or against. But it was state land, your land. And it was put up for discovery, and it was discovered. And when you discover it, you have a right for exploration, and it's being explored. And when you get done exploring it, you have a right to produce it on state land, unless the state says you can't. But now comes along Trout Unlimited and a few other ones. At the instance of you know, some of these great organizations, they're having the EPA make a watershed study. If they come down, which very likely they will, with a watershed study that says the development of this mine would be harmful to the watershed, that means every piece of land in the state no longer can be developed, because they'll use the same case for every piece of land in the state of Alaska. And by the way, for the native groups that had 44 million acres of land, that same principle, that same idea that happened once before could be applied. And we've lost our state. We've lost the Native Land Claims Act. We have become the colony of the federal government again. 55 years later. And that's why the state, and you have to be more aggressive and say, this isn't going to happen. This is not to happen. Now, the governor's going to take the EPA to court. I'm saying, no. It's not only court. If it can be done correctly with the right permits, then go ahead and do it. I am very concerned that we have got used to, again, doing what the government tells us to do all the time. Laying on our backs, wiggling our feet, and praying that you give me a doggy bone. If you can envision yourself doing it, that's what we're doing. That's something that concerns me a lot because we've got a little bit comfortable, and that's not good for the state. I talk too much too. What else we got?
Good afternoon, Congressman.
Yeah. Hello.
It's always good to see you. Thank you for taking some time to spend it with us. I'm from Haines on the Southeast Conference Board and the chair of the Fisheries Committee. Will there be a moratorium on EPA's small vessel discharge permits?
If I have my way, they will be. You know, we extended it for 2 years, and I think that's about to be expelled. But you have to have a bill that will carry, hopefully if we get a water bill, we're going to do that. Because I don't know how you're going to operate if that is put in place. It's just a discharge. They're even talking about deck discharge, by the way. Here's the one I give. EPA, I'm sure you're aware of this. If you catch a fish and throw it overboard, that's okay. But if you cut the head off and throw the head in, that's not okay. Remember the logic pill? How does that's good for the crabbies. Now they say you got to grind it up. Well, I think you're going to have to grind it up to it's really slime. Now, wait a minute. Is that good or I mean, is that better for the ecosystem? Probably not. But that's what they think it should be done. I was just on that ferry the other day, and what killed me so much, they showed me these really fancy waste treatment things now. It's awesome. I mean, they grind it and they press it with these plates and electronically treat it and they chlorinate it because they're required to chlorinate it. Okay? But then they've decided that they have to dechlorinate it before they put it in the water. That's true. What happened to the logic pill? You know? All right, what else we got?
Welcome to Southeast Conference, Congressman Young, and thank you for your 48 years of service to the state of Alaska. I'm Patricia Phillips. I'm on the Southeast Conference Board of Directors and chairperson of the Economic Development Committee. Our committee's question is, please provide an update on proposed amendments related to sea otters in the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and as a follow-up, what results came from your earlier meetings with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding heavy-handed enforcement?
Well, let's go to the heavy-handed enforcement. I whacked the Park Service because they did the same thing, and I hope they get the same idea, and I'm going to do the same thing to the Forest Service. 32 enforcement employees in Ketchikan. Flak jackets and pistols. 27 trucks. For what? What are they enforcing? 3 people making a campfire in a gravel pit? Now, where is the logic? The other one is on sea otters. This has become more complex than it should be because the quickest solution, if I can get the state again to do as they should do, is take over the management of marine mammals, including sea otters. Some people don't like that idea. I think it's a better idea. I always argue the closer to the source, the better you can manage it. We know the sea otters, and those. I think we got 37,000 sea otters estimated in southeast Alaska now. If you talk to a diver, the bottom of the sea, the bottom off the shores of our islands, where there used to be crabs and sea urchins and abalones and gooey ducks and all these other little things that you love to eat, it's bare. It's made a desert out of it. And it's a classic example of reintroductions work real well. But they forgot the management. And the management means that you have to harvest so many sea otters. Alaska natives, Southeast natives have a right to harvest them, but they have to make doodads out of it, you know, earrings and da-da-da. And you can only make so many of those things because you have to do it. You can't have it made itself. You can't send it out and have it made into. And that means that the sea otters aren't being harvested. They're not being managed. And my idea And my bill is very simple. And I'll change it a little bit because I had some objection, that we would put a quota for every village of how many sea otters can be harvested, and the pelts can be sold to whoever wishes to buy them. And their argument, it would hurt the artist, and I said, okay, we can fix that at where any pelt sold overseas cannot export to us a finished product such as the knickknacks the artist thing. And that will solve that problem. But we need to do this. Hallelujah. We need to do, there goes the profit margin. We need to do this because they are decimating our crab, you know, all the other forms of, and the subsistence side of it too. So we're going to try to do that on the federal level. If I can't get it passed, you know, by the way, can you imagine the little pictures of the cute little dingoes like this? You know? They have to eat, I believe they have to eat a third of their weight every day. A third. And some of these suckers weigh 50 pounds. You think of the amount of consumption that they're doing. They are pretty. By the way, the fur is awesome, by the way. I want you to know that. Yes, sir.
Hey, Congressman Young. I'm Mike Bell. I'm co-chairman of the Mining Committee. The Mining Safety and Health Administration have done a lot of good work over the years in helping mining to become safer, and we're all really grateful for that. However, in the last couple of years, it has changed from a training and safety organization to an enforcement organization. And it's becoming a great concern. I think you may be aware that just in the past week or so, they requested $5 million be taken out of training for states and for safety and put into their enforcement budget. So how do we work?
Well, if they've requested it, we still have a chance. I hope my staff is listening to this. We have a chance to make sure that doesn't occur. You know, this is one of my pet peeves right now. Every agency has its own police force. Every agency. EPA has its own police force. Every one of them that you think about has an enforcement branch of their government, and they're using it to collect money by filing fines against you just because you did bad paperwork. That's the thing that drives. It doesn't help the environment out. It doesn't increase the safety. They're going to take and put that $5 million into enforcement and not do it in the training. So the chances of, if you don't do the training, you're going to have more infractions of the law because they're not trained properly, but that means they can fine you more. Again, the logic pill. The logic pill. I'm going to love that. I'm going to have this logic. I'm going to run around with that. All right. What else we got? What's their time frame? Yes, sir.
We still have plenty of time.
Hey.
As long as we can keep you here, we would enjoy your comments. So, Gordy Roble, President of the Southeast Conference. I'm also Chairman of the Health, Education, and Workforce Development Committee. And we just had a meeting this morning in which several people brought up the issue of secure rural schools and what's happening to that funding. Can you give us a view to the future? Because if that funding isn't there, the state's going to have to figure out how to keep our schools alive.
Well, there's two things, and unfortunately the state won't do that. You lose your communities. And you lose the school, you lose your communities. And my biggest gripe, and I can tell you, the Senate has passed a decent bill. We're working one on the House. We'll get passed. I'm not sure the amounts of money, but my argument has always been that if they want to save the trees in Miami and Philadelphia and New York and San Francisco, then they ought to at least pay for our schools. That was all based on stumpage fees, but we're not harvesting any more trees. But it'll kill the communities without these schools. So I'm hoping the state will rise to it. We're going to pass a bill. I'm hoping it'll have the appropriate funding for these rural schools. We have good support, you know, from the Oregon delegation and from the western side of this, other than California. We don't count that bunch. But we have good support. It does affect every school community in the areas. And you know, they'll say, well, we don't have the money. Okay, if you don't have the money, give us the land back. You want to solve the problems in this state? You want to solve the problems of this nation? Make the federal lands private. You think about this. Show me any federal lands ever made any money. I challenge anybody. The worst management in the world is the federal government. The worst. If you want to solve the problem, give us the land. Let us develop our minerals instead of importing 31% of it. Let's take and develop our fossil fuels instead of paying $5 a gallon or $6 a gallon. Let us have a president that says, let us drill so we're no longer dependent upon the Mideast and those that don't like us. You know, we're still sending over $300 billion this year to buy oil from countries that don't like us. Oh, we don't need to open ANWR. By the way, the Senate failed it today. I passed it 12 times. And Bill Clinton, by the way, vetoed it one time. You know what the argument then it is today? And we would have saved $4 trillion if he allowed that to be developed. $4 trillion that we sent overseas. And the argument today is the same argument they had then. We can't do it quick enough. It's too late. By the way, we're going to put windmills on our beanie caps. How many saw me with a windmill in my beanie cap? Oh, yeah, all right. Boy, did I get ridiculed by some people. I was trying to show how silly the Obama energy policy is. And my daughters called me and said, Daddy, it looks so silly. I said, it was the whole idea.
Wait till they see your logic, Bill.
But that's the problem. And we have lots of fossil fuels. You know, and everybody said, well, we'll use this different fuel. We'll use windmills. Okay, I'll buy that. I haven't seen it drive a ship yet. It might. Used to have sail ships. Solar power. And the big thing is, until we find out how we can save that energy and then call upon it, you have the down periods. And the bigger thing is, what are you going to do with all those batteries? Anybody here try to get rid of a regular battery? Legally? It's a bitch. Now, no one's told me anything about lithium batteries, which burn. How are we going to get rid of them? I'll guarantee the EPA in a minute. Oh, you can't do that. So we're not using our heads, because the easiest and cheapest way to move a pound of weight now is with fossil fuels. Can that change? Maybe. But as long as it's still reasonably priced, it will not change. The rest of the countries aren't going for all this other nonsense. And they're competing against us. By the way, China burns more fossil fuels than we do today. They're not looking about cutting back. In fact, they're buying all over the globe fossil energy. Now, we have a great opportunity in Alaska somewhere along the line because we get a lot of coal. But right now, that's a bad thing to burn. By the way, if you haven't done it, do me a favor. You're all relatively intelligent in this room. Buy the book Coal Sun by John Casey. Do that for me and read it. And that'll put the fear of Christ in you about the scientific information about the charade of the emission of man-made gas causing global warming. I've been called a flatliner all my career because I've studied this idea of what the globe has done in the past and what it's going to do in the present and the future. But this thing will take and put it and document it. In fact, we're possibly going into a real severe cooling period of time because of the sun. The sunspots, they call it the cold sun. It's not new. It happens about every 200 years. Is it the big one? Probably not. But that changed the whole concept of so-called global, they don't call it global warming, they call it climate change. Yes, the climate changes, and it's going to continue to change. But it's not because of you. If that was the case and it was your fault, where were you when they made all the oil in Prudhoe Bay? Nothing but ice. But what is it today? Still ice. What was it before? A tremendous amount of carbon that became oil. And they think there's more oil in the North Pole than any other area of the world. If that's the case, how is it there? What changed? 11 times this earth is warmed and chilled. But we get caught in the Al Gore and the Barack Obamas and the Nancy Pelosi. It's all our fault. And we have to wake up. That's nonsense. Who do we think we are? This globe is going to continue to do what it's done all these years. We'll have earthquakes of great magnitude, we'll have volcanoes of great magnitude, and we will cool down. And that I have no doubt. And if anything I can do when the Lord takes me or the devil gets me, I want to fly around as a raven because he can survive anything. He lives at 60 below zero in Fort Yukon, so I figure I can suffer the cold weather. I want to fly around and I'll say, oh, I told you, I told you. That's what I want to do. Anyway, I'm out of time. I want to thank you all for listening to my tirade. Thank you very much.